Jason wiped the sweat off his brow, his fingers gripping an old crumpled document. The heat was unbearable, but it wasn't just the scorching sun making him sweat. It was the weight of what he held. This paper, yellowed at the edges, was more than just a piece of history. It was proof. Proof that the land beneath his feet wasn't just dirt and grass. It was his father's legacy. A legacy that the Homeowners Association, HOA, had stolen. His jaw clenched as he ran his thumb over the faded ink, the signatures, the official seals. This wasn't just some claim. It was a legal fact, and yet 96 luxury homes now stood where his father's house once did. Manicured lawns, pristine driveways, expensive cars parked outside, families living their perfect suburban dream, all on stolen land. Jason had spent months fighting, knocking on every door, demanding justice. Lawyers, city officials, courtrooms, but every path led to a dead end. No one wanted to listen. No one wanted to help. And now, standing in the middle of the cul-de-sac, surrounded by the very homes that had erased his past, Jason knew one thing for certain. He wasn't leaving without a fight. A sharp screech of tires snapped him out of his thoughts. A black SUV swerved into the street, kicking up dust as it skidded to a stop just inches from him. Jason didn't flinch, but his heartbeat hammered against his ribs. The doors flew open, and out stepped Roger Whitman, the man who ran the HOA. Roger was in his early 50s, but the power he wielded made him move like he was younger. His suit, crisp and tailored, screamed wealth. His eyes, hidden behind designer sunglasses, were unreadable. But Jason didn't need to see them to know what was coming. Roger adjusted the cuffs of his shirt, then took a slow step forward. His polished shoes crunched against the gravel as he stopped just close enough for Jason to catch the faint whiff of expensive cologne. Then with a cold, casual smirk, he spoke. "You've got 24 hours. Jason's fingers tightened around the document. 24 hours for what? Roger's smirk widened. He leaned in slightly, his voice dropping into something almost amused. To disappear. Jason held his ground. This land belongs to my father. Roger sighed, shaking his head like he was dealing with a child who just didn't understand how the world worked. No, Jason, this land belongs to the people who paid for it, who built on it, who own homes on it. He gestured around them, at the pristine houses, the neatly trimmed hedges. This is a community now, a neighborhood. You're just a problem that needs to go away. Jason squared his shoulders. Not happening. Roger chuckled. You think you have a choice? His expression darkened, the smirk fading as he took another step forward. This time his voice carried something heavier, something more dangerous. You either walk away on your own, or you don't walk away at all. Silence stretched between them. The heat, the stillness, the distant sound of kids playing in their backyards. It all felt surreal, like a twisted dream Jason couldn't wake up from. Then Roger leaned in one last time and whispered, "Dead or alive, the choice is yours." Jason's jaw tightened, but he didn't move. He didn't blink. He didn't let the fear show. Roger stepped back and adjusted his cuffs again, the smirk returning like he had already won. He turned, gave Jason one final glance over his shoulder, then slid back into the SUV. The engine growled to life, and within seconds the black car was speeding away, leaving Jason standing there in the dust, the weight of the threat hanging heavy in the air. Jason exhaled sharply, finally allowing himself to blink. Then his phone buzzed. His muscles tensed as he pulled it from his pocket. Unknown number. His pulse pounded as he swiped the screen. A message appeared. You think this is about the HOA? You have no idea what you're up against. Jason's stomach dropped. This wasn't just about land anymore. It was something much, much bigger. Jason exhaled sharply, finally allowing himself to blink. Then his phone buzzed. His muscles tensed as he pulled it from his pocket. Unknown number. His pulse pounded as he swiped the screen. A message appeared. You think this is about the HOA? You have no idea what you're up against. Jason's stomach dropped. This wasn't just about land anymore. It was something much, much bigger. Jason had always believed in hard work and perseverance. He wasn't born into wealth, but he had built everything he had from the ground up. A self-made businessman, he owned a successful contracting firm, employing dozens of people. His company had even worked on projects across the state, restoring homes, rebuilding neighborhoods. Ironic given that his own childhood home had been wiped off the map. His father's land, historic family property, had been in their name for generations. It was more than just dirt. It was history, a reminder of everything his ancestors had built, fought for, and preserved. But while Jason had been working, expanding his business, growing his empire, someone had stolen it right out from under him. The Homeowners Association, HOA, led by the corrupt and ruthless Roger Whitman, had illegally seized the land and sold it to developers. Now 96 brand-new, luxury homes stood where his father's house once did. The HOA had done it without his knowledge, without his permission, and without any legal right. At least that's what Jason thought, until he saw the forged documents. His lawyer, Malik Carter, had gone through every record, every file, every deed in the county archives. And what he found was shocking. The HOA had managed to change the ownership records. According to the legal system, Jason's father had never even owned the land. Jason sat in Malik's office, staring at the thick folder of legal documents in front of him. His stomach twisted as he flipped over through the pages. Everything had been rewritten. How? Jason's voice was dangerously low, his hands clenching into fists. Malik sighed, rubbing his temples. He was a sharp, no-nonsense attorney, but even he looked rattled. The HOA has been doing this for years. They use fake signatures, forged deeds, pay off the right people, and before you know it, he gestured toward the papers. They own your family's legacy. Jason's chest burned with rage. This wasn't a mistake. This wasn't a clerical error. This was theft. And Roger had just threatened his life to keep it that way. Jason slammed the folder shut. We fight. Malik hesitated. Jason, we take them to court. We expose this. Malik exhaled slowly, then leaned forward, resting his elbows on the desk. You're not listening, man. This isn't just the HOA. This goes deeper. Jason narrowed his eyes. What do you mean? Malik tapped one of the documents. Look at the dates. The land transfer happened 10 years ago. That's before your father even passed. Jason felt his breath hitch. That didn't make sense. His father had lived on that land until his last breath. How the hell did they transfer land from a man who was still alive? Malik's expression was grim. That's what I'm telling you. Someone inside the system made it happen. This isn't just Roger and his HOA buddies. This has city officials, real estate developers, maybe even law enforcement involved. Jason's fingers curled into the edge of the desk. Then we take it higher. State attorneys, media, whoever we need to. Malik scoffed. Media? You think they're going to help? Jason frowned. Why wouldn't they? Malik sighed and pulled up a news website on his laptop. He turned the screen toward Jason. The headline made his stomach drop. Disgruntled businessman attacks local HOA over false land claims. Beneath the headline was a photo of Jason, taken outside a courthouse. The article twisted the story, making it seem like he was some greedy developer trying to scam innocent homeowners. They're painting you as the villain, Jason, Malik said quietly, and the HOA is making sure they control the story. Jason felt his rage boiling over. So what? We just give up? No, Malik said firmly, but you need to understand. You're going up against a system designed to crush people like you. Jason clenched his jaw. He wasn't afraid of a fight. He had built his entire life from nothing. This was just another battle. But as he stared at his own face in the fabricated news article, he couldn't shake the feeling that this wasn't just about land anymore. Something much bigger was at play. Jason walked into the city courthouse, gripping the legal documents like a lifeline. His heart pounded, but his face remained calm. He had prepared for this moment, believing that justice still existed. His lawyer, Malik, walked beside him, adjusting his tie. "Just stick to the facts. The law is on our side," he whispered. Jason nodded, but something about the way the HOA members smirked from the other side of the courtroom made his skin crawl. Roger Whitman sat front and center, legs crossed, radiating smug confidence. The judge, a heavyset man with deep lines on his face, glanced at the paperwork. He didn't even skim through them properly before letting out a bored sigh. "This case is dismissed." Jason's stomach dropped. "What?" Malik shot up from his seat. "Your Honor, we have undeniable proof that—" "I said it's dismissed," the judge interrupted coldly. "The land has already been developed. Homes have been sold. Overturning this decision would create unnecessary legal complications." Jason's blood boiled. "This is theft," he burst out. "You're letting these criminals get away with it." The judge's gaze darkened. "Watch yourself, Mr. Cole." Before Jason could say another word, the gavel came down. Case closed. Malik exhaled sharply, grabbing Jason's arm. "Not here, man. We'll figure out another way." Jason felt like the ground beneath him was crumbling. He had brought undeniable proof, and they hadn't even looked at it. This wasn't about legalities anymore. The system was rigged. As Jason walked out of the courthouse, his phone buzzed. A new notification popped up. "Breaking news. Scandal hits local businessman Jason Cole." His fingers trembled as he clicked the link. A grainy video started playing. It was him, but from years ago. A younger Jason, standing outside a nightclub, involved in a heated argument. His voice was raised, and at the peak of the confrontation, he shoved a man back. The video cut right before the man punched him first, making it look like Jason had been the aggressor. The article beneath it painted him as a violent man with a history of aggression. Jason felt a wave of nausea. "This is a setup," he whispered. Malik grabbed his phone, scanning the article. "This is bad. Real bad." Jason's hands curled into fists. "Where the hell did they even get this?" Malik shook his head. "Someone's digging into your past. They want to bury you before you can fight back." And it was working. Within minutes, Jason's phone was flooded with calls from reporters, angry comments on social media, and even messages from his own business associates asking for explanations. This wasn't just about the land anymore. They were destroying his entire life. As Jason drove through the city that evening, his mind was spinning. The legal system had failed him. The media had turned against him, and now someone was deliberately trying to ruin his reputation. And then he noticed it, a black SUV in his rearview mirror. It had been behind him for the last 10 minutes. His grip on the steering wheel tightened. He took a sudden left. The SUV followed. Jason's heart pounded. He sped up. So did they. And then they accelerated. Jason barely had time to react before the SUV lunged toward him, trying to ram him off the road. His tires screeched as he swerved onto a side street, his breath caught in his throat. The SUV didn't stop. It was still on him, relentless. Jason's hands tightened around the wheel as he gunned the engine, weaving through traffic, adrenaline surging through his veins. He had been in tight situations before, but this was an execution attempt. They wanted him gone. He spotted a construction zone ahead. Thinking fast, he cut the wheel, swerving at the last second into the closed-off street. The SUV didn't react in time. With a deafening crash, the vehicle slammed into a barricade, tires screeching as it skidded out of control. Jason didn't wait to see the aftermath. He sped away, hands shaking, pulse racing. His phone rang, an unknown number. Jason's mouth was dry as he answered, still catching his breath. A distorted voice came through the line, calm, cold, unshaken. "You think this is just about land?" Jason's body went still. The voice continued, low and menacing. "You have no idea what you've stepped into. This is just the beginning." The line went dead. Jason sat there, gripping the phone, as the truth finally sank in. This wasn't about real estate anymore. This was something much, much bigger. Jason knew he couldn't fight this alone. The system was rigged, the media was against him, and someone wanted him dead. He needed an inside source, someone who knew HOA's darkest secrets. And he had only one lead, Frank Delaney, a former HOA board member, fired under mysterious circumstances 2 years ago. He had disappeared from the public eye, but Jason had managed to dig up an old address. It wasn't in the city. It was deep in the outskirts, past broken roads and abandoned houses. Jason parked his car outside a rusty trailer, the windows covered with black plastic sheets. His gut told him this was a bad idea, but he knocked anyway. Silence. Then the sound of a shotgun cocking. Jason froze. From the shadows, a gaunt, tired-looking man appeared at the door, gun aimed directly at Jason's chest. Frank Delaney. "You have 3 seconds to tell me why you're here," Frank growled. His eyes were bloodshot, his voice rough. "And if you say HOA, I'll blow your damn head off." Jason slowly raised his hands. "That's exactly why I'm here." Frank's eyes narrowed. "I'm not with them," Jason continued. "I'm their next target." A long pause. Then Frank laughed bitterly. "Yeah, that means you're already dead. You just don't know it yet." Jason didn't flinch. "Maybe, but I bet you know why they're coming after me." Frank studied him, then sighed. Inside. Now. Frank's trailer was a mess. Empty beer bottles, stacks of old files, a television playing static. He looked like a man who hadn't slept peacefully in years. "You want to know the truth?" Frank said, slumping into a chair. "HOA ain't just about real estate scams. That's the small game." Jason leaned in. "Then what's the big game?" Frank exhaled. "They launder money. Millions. HOA ain't nothing but a front. You think they stole your land just to build some houses? Hell no. That land was already promised to someone else, someone powerful. And now that you're stirring up trouble, they're cleaning house." Jason's stomach tightened. "Who's behind it?" Frank hesitated, then pulled out a USB drive from a drawer. "This," he said, sliding it across the table, "is everything I got before they kicked me out." Jason grabbed it. "What's on it?" Frank's expression darkened. "Names, dates, bank transactions, and one video file that'll blow this whole thing open." Jason's fingers clenched around the USB. This was it. A small victory, the first real proof. But Frank wasn't done. His voice dropped to a whisper. "They know you're looking. They know you're here." Jason felt a chill creep up his spine. "Wait, what do you mean?" Frank nodded toward the window. Jason's stomach dropped. Through the thin plastic covering, he saw a black SUV pull up outside. They had been followed. Frank grabbed his shotgun, cursing. "Damn it! I told you they don't leave loose ends." Jason didn't wait. He shoved the USB into his pocket and bolted for the back door. The sound of footsteps approached. Bang! The front door exploded inward. Jason didn't turn around. He ran. Through the dirt, through the overgrown weeds, through the night. As headlights flashed behind him, he knew one thing. He wasn't just fighting for his land anymore. He was fighting to stay alive. Jason drove through the night, his heart pounding. The USB in his pocket felt like a time bomb. He had to find a way to access the files before HOA or whoever was behind them caught up. He didn't trust his own home anymore. Too risky. So he drove to the only safe place he could think of, Malik's garage. Malik had been Jason's best friend since childhood. A tech genius turned mechanic, he was the only person Jason trusted with something this dangerous. When Jason pulled up, Malik was under a car, oil-streaked hands working on an engine. "Man, it's 3 a.m., Malik muttered, pulling himself up. "This better be..." He paused when he saw Jason's face. "Damn, what happened to you?" Jason didn't answer. He just held up the USB. Malik sighed. "Yeah, come inside." Inside the garage's back office, Malik plugged the USB into a laptop. The files loaded. Jason leaned over his shoulder, scanning the documents, bank transfers, offshore accounts, property deeds. But then one video file. Malik clicked on it. The screen flickered. A grainy security camera recording. It showed a handshake. Two men in a dimly lit parking garage. Jason recognized one of them instantly. Roger. But the second man, Jason's blood ran cold. It was a high-ranking city official. Someone who had sworn to uphold justice. A judge. The same judge who had rejected Jason's case. "Oh, hell no," Malik whispered. Jason's hands clenched into fists. That bastard wasn't just in on it. He was running it. HOA wasn't acting alone. The corruption went all the way up. But before Jason could say another word, boom! The office door burst open. Armed men stormed in. Jason barely had time to react before a gun smashed into his skull. Darkness swallowed him whole. Jason woke up to cold metal against his wrists. Handcuffs. His vision blurred, but as he looked around, his stomach sank. A jail cell. And standing outside, grinning like the devil himself, Roger. Jason lunged forward, but the cuffs yanked him back. "You son of a—" Roger chuckled. Now. You really thought you were winning?" Jason's head was throbbing. "How the hell did I get here?" Roger smirked. "Simple. Malik sold you out." Jason's breath caught in his throat. "No, not Malik." Roger shrugged. "Guess your best friend had a price after all, and now the police think you were trying to blackmail a judge. Tough break." Jason's mind raced. This wasn't just about the land anymore. They were erasing him, destroying his credibility, locking him away permanently. Roger leaned in, voice dripping with mock sympathy. "You're done, Jason. You should have walked away." Jason's jaw clenched. This wasn't over. Because he still had one last move left. Jason sat in his jail cell, the cold metal of the handcuffs digging into his skin. His mind raced. They thought they had won. Roger, the corrupt HOA, and even the judge, they all believed they had buried him for good. But they made one mistake. They underestimated him. A guard stomped in, unlocking the door. "Your lawyer's here." Jason stood, straightening his shoulders. Game on. Jason wasn't surprised to see Malik sitting across from him in the visitation room. His so-called best friend, the man who had sold him out. Jason's fists clenched under the table. Malik looked like hell, dark circles under his eyes, guilt in every line of his face. "Man, listen." "Save it." Jason cut him off, voice cold. "Why are you here?" Malik swallowed hard. "Because I didn't give them everything." Jason's eyes narrowed. Malik pulled out a second USB. "They forced me to hand over the first one," Malik said, voice low. "But I had already made a backup. This has everything. The judge, the money, the real land documents. It's enough to take them all down." Jason's heart pounded. This was his way out. But there was one problem. "How the hell do we get this out there?" Jason asked. "They control the courts, the police, the media." Malik hesitated. Then he pulled out his phone and placed it on the table. Jason's breath caught. A live stream. Malik had already started broadcasting. Thousands of people were watching. And they had heard everything. Jason was pulled from his jail cell the next morning. Not for court, but because the entire city was in an uproar. The video had gone viral. News outlets picked it up. The FBI got involved. And now Jason was being led into a courtroom, not as a defendant, but as the man who had exposed one of the biggest corruption scandals in the city's history. The courtroom was packed. Cameras flashed. Reporters whispered. And at the defense table sat Roger. The judge who had tried to destroy Jason was nowhere to be seen. Word was he had fled the country overnight. Jason took the stand, his voice steady, his eyes locked on Roger. "I was told to walk away," Jason said. "I was threatened, attacked, and framed, all because I wanted to reclaim what was legally mine." The prosecution played the USB evidence on the big screen. The bribes, the illegal land deals, the threats. The jury watched in stunned silence. When the final video played, the one of Roger meeting the judge in secret, the courtroom erupted. Roger's lawyer stood desperate. Your Honor, this evidence is enough, the judge snapped. Silence fell. Everyone turned as the judge fixed Roger with a cold stare. Mr. Roger, you are hereby charged with fraud, conspiracy, and multiple counts of illegal land acquisition. A ripple of shock spread through the courtroom. Roger's face turned pale. He shot up from his seat, fists clenched. You can't do this! I own this city! The judge banged his gavel. Not anymore. Two officers grabbed Roger, shoving him into cuffs. Jason exhaled slowly. It was over. Outside the courthouse, the crowd erupted into cheers as Jason stepped out. Reporters shoved microphones in his face. Jason, how does it feel to win? Did you know the scandal was this big? What's next for you? Jason took a deep breath. He had fought for justice and won. But the cost had been heavy. He turned to Malik, who stood beside him, hands in his pockets, avoiding his gaze. Why'd you do it? Jason asked quietly. Malik sighed. Because I owed you, and because I knew the truth had to come out. Jason studied him for a long moment. Then he nodded. Maybe their friendship wasn't salvageable. But today, at least, they had done the right thing. As the cameras flashed, Jason looked up at the courthouse one last time. This wasn't just about land anymore. This was about every person who had ever been cheated, threatened, or silenced. And today, for once, justice had won. Jason stood on the steps of the courthouse, the weight of everything he had endured pressing down on him. The cameras flashed, the reporters yelled, and the crowd cheered his name. Victory. That's what this was supposed to be. Roger was in handcuffs. The corrupt judge had fled. The HOA's empire was crumbling. But deep in Jason's gut, something felt off. As the reporters swarmed him, Jason's phone buzzed in his pocket. Unknown number. His stomach twisted. He stepped away from the cameras, pressing the phone to his ear. A voice, distorted, cold, spoke. Congratulations, Mr. Carter. You won a battle. But the war has only just begun. Jason's blood ran cold. The line went dead. For weeks, the city remained in chaos. More names were exposed. More arrests were made. The media called it the biggest land scandal in state history. Jason should have been relieved, but he wasn't. Because every time he closed his eyes, he heard that voice. And every time he walked outside, he felt watched. One night as he sat in his office sifting through legal paperwork to officially reclaim his father's land, a news alert flashed on his laptop. Breaking news. Roger found dead in his cell. Jason's heart stopped. He clicked the article. Authorities claim it was suicide. Jason knew better. Roger had been a pawn. And whoever was really pulling the strings had just wiped him off the board. Jason drove home late that night, gripping the wheel, his mind racing. As he pulled into his driveway, his headlights washed over a figure standing by his front door. A woman, dressed in an expensive black coat, her hands in her pockets, perfectly calm, as if she had been expecting him. Jason stepped out of his car slowly. Who the hell are you? The woman smiled. Someone who's been watching your progress, Mr. Carter. Jason's fists clenched. If you're with Roger's people, she held up a hand. Roger was a fool. He got greedy, and greed makes people reckless. Jason took a step forward. What do you want? The woman's smile didn't falter. To offer you a choice. Jason's pulse pounded in his ears. Walk away, she said. Take your land. Rebuild. Live your life. Jason exhaled sharply. And if I don't, the woman tilted her head, then you'll find out what real power looks like. Jason's breath caught in his throat. He thought he had been fighting the system. But now, for the first time, he realized the real war hadn't even started yet. And he was already in too deep.